It started off with a little blurb in the Long Island Catholic newspaper for volunteers to come to Uniondale, where we would have a meeting, anyone interested in starting the soup kitchen. We had so many, 30 people, about 30, different faiths, which was great. And Jean Kelly happened to be one of them. And Sandy Chapin, Harry Chapin's widow, was there. Actually, she's the one that came up with the name The Inn.
At the very beginning, I was literally just one of the 30 that was in the room. And that's when Mike had turned to me and said, "Don't worry, we'll find something for you to do." And later asked me if I would be the temporary volunteer chairperson. So I heard the word, all I heard was temporary, and I thought, temporary? That doesn't sound too bad.
Well, first of all, we needed a place, and all of the houses of worship said, no, we really don't have the space to do it here. But we found this wonderful woman pastor, I think the only woman pastor in Hempstead at the time, who said, yes, please come and use my facility. So already there in their community room, they had tables and chairs.
We had no money. We were just well-intentioned individuals. And the thought was, what about all the other religious groups that had met with us and didn't have the space but said they wanted to help? Could we go back to them and ask each one of them to see if they could handle a month's rent?
Hofstra University, their caterers, gave us soup. We had donations from a farm for the vegetables. I made a barley soup. Adelphi dishes, they donated dishes. Salvation Army, paper cups. So that's where it came from.
And we had tablecloths on the tables and flowers and food for about 50 people, I believe. And we opened the doors and no one came. And then two of our amazing volunteers walked out into the streets and walked into the parks and asked people, were they hungry? Did they want a free lunch? And there's always that saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And all of a sudden there was a free lunch.
Thanksgiving in 1983. Jean and I were there with the other volunteers, and there were no guests. So Jean and I got in Jean's car, and we proceeded to drive around Hempstead looking for people to come to this soup kitchen. This could never happen now. So we'd be driving around, we'd see somebody, we'd roll down the window and say, "Do you have a place to eat on Thanksgiving?" And most people looked at us like we were crazy, but I guess we were.
And then the word spread, and their families started coming, their neighbors, their friends out on the street started coming in. Before we knew it, we were feeding 60 people. But there was opposition, I recall, and especially the local merchants. They were afraid that, oh my goodness, seeing all these people on the street, all these homeless people, it's not going to be good for our business. So they went to the mayor and they said, you got to get rid of this place. We organized a group of about 30 people and came with our signs, no room in the inn. No room in the inn. We're going to be thrown out. Well, that got all of the churches and synagogues really behind us. And they said, what are you talking about? We have to keep this place. This is really helping people.
We had to move from church to church, maybe 3 or 4. And then John Brennan, his mother had recently passed away, and he wanted to do something in her name. So he offered the money and purchased the Mary Brennan Inn. I think the word that I would sum up for it and how I feel about it, I still think it's miraculous. It's just unbelievable what can be done with people caring and sharing and just going on. And when we started it, we didn't have any idea what would happen. Every time I speak to Jean and she tells me what's happening, I'm in awe. I just hang the phone up and that is amazing.
Thank you for joining us. This is Dana Lopez. I'm so proud, so happy, and so excited to present to you the first In Gratitude podcast. And of course, it would it's just the perfect intro for me to be here today with Jean Kelly and Rob Kammerer, our current executive director of the Inn and also board member of the Inn. But that's not how it started. We just watched a video courtesy of Craig Cooper Productions that was recorded 3 years ago now, almost 3 years ago, in 2018 to kind of go over a little bit of the history of the inn. So first of all, I just want to say thank you, Jean and Rob, for being here today with us. It's
Thank
so
you
good
for
to see
having
your
us.
faces. Thank you. It's so good to see your faces. I use my virtual background as the current Mary Brennan Inn, but in the video you did see the original location for the Mary Brennan Inn. So I'm just going to just kind of throw it to you. February 1st, 2021 will be the 38th anniversary of the very first meeting that eventually became what would be the Mary Brennan Inn Soup Kitchen. So Jean, you were there.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about that day?
It was just any ordinary night in a way, that we just walked into a house in Uniondale, and a group of strangers came together. And what was remarkable is that nobody really knew anyone else. I found it interesting that they were from all different backgrounds, all different representatives of churches, but they all just basically wanted to see what could be done. And I was brought by a friend who had seen the little ad, and we were just seeing if we could be of help. And what I found so amazing about that very first meeting, having been in the corporate world and working, that no one wrote anything down. No one documented anything. It was just a group of people sitting in a big living room and sharing their concerns of how things were happening, and that people were seeing people on occasion eating out of a garbage can, and that there was a problem here that wasn't being met. And we were just so grateful. I was grateful to be there to witness it, because I was very naive at the time, had no idea this was happening on Long Island. And just a handful of the people in the room had witnessed people in need. So it was a learning experience for everyone. And I'm the last of the original people that were in that room still involved, and so grateful and honored to be representing what that initial thought was, which was to treat everybody with dignity and respect. That was the most important thing that I saw that came out of it, and that's what I was attracted to, was not that we were going to try to feed people, but how it was going to be done. That it was going to be really important that no questions would be asked. No one would have to prove that they needed to eat. And that resonated with me and with everybody else, it seems, that has followed us 38 years later, including this man here.
Yeah, that was my next question, because obviously, Rob, you may not have been there for the very first meeting, and obviously we now know that you have since married and have been a married couple for many years, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
how did you come into the picture, Rob?
Pat O'Connor in the first video used the word miraculous. And I don't know if I used miraculous, but something similar, like dumb luck. I had gone to a meeting. This was a nuclear freeze meeting in American Belmore. And we were there, and the person running the meeting said, "Oh, I got this letter from somebody. They're opening a soup kitchen in Hempstead. They're looking for volunteers. I'm going to pass this sheet of paper around." I put my name on that list, and I'm doing a lot of editing here. A little while after that, Jean called me. I never called her back. She called me again. I didn't call her back. And then finally, I get a message saying, "Oh, we'll see you at the soup kitchen next Tuesday." And it's from Jean. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I better call her back. They're counting on me. So I called her back and said, "Gee, I didn't know you volunteered me like that." So she explained that there was like a something about the lines, and there was another Rob above, and he asked to go with another volunteer, but Jean inadvertently called me thinking I was his other guy, Bob. And so that was the dumb luck part, that, that was figured out. And then I did show up, and as I guess as they say in Hollywood, that's how the whole thing got started.
The rest is history.
The rest
It
is
sure
history.
is. I have to say that in all the years that I've known you both, that is one story that I actually haven't heard about, how there was some other Rob. I didn't know that.
Yes.
That is,
Because I was asked to be, in the first video you see, I was asked to be the temporary volunteer chairperson. So I got all of these lists from different meetings that were being held where there were potential volunteers. And there was a man named Bob Hoffman, actually, on one line, and then a woman's name, and then Rob's name. And I think it was, but we wrote down Bob Kammerer at that time too. So when I called the first Bob, he said, there's this Christine who signed up too. I'd like to, if she wants to volunteer, I'd like to be scheduled on the same day she's there. So I thought, oh, now I'm going to be doing a matchmaking thing at the same time. But I said, well, I don't know. I'll see what I can do. And when I called Christine, she said the same thing. Is that guy Bob going to be volunteering? I said, yes, he was actually wanting to go the same day. So that's when I was able to coordinate them both for Tuesday. But I was so busy at my regular job that I looked at the wrong line for Bob, and I called his number, and he had never called me back, and just left the message, Bob, I'm so happy to tell you I was able to get you scheduled for Tuesday, and Christine's going to be there. So we'll look forward to seeing you. Thanks. And then I just hung up. And then he had to call because he got so frightened that somebody was expecting him and knew it was a mistake. And then I realized he had never called me back. So I sort of chewed him out a little bit for having never spoken to him before, saying, why didn't you call back? And he said, he's busy. And I said, everybody's busy. You know, like the reality is everyone is busy. And he came down, and ironically, Pat O'Connor felt there was some kind of chemistry between us. And she was telling that to Mike Moran at the time. And she said, you don't know what you're talking about. And then we ended up being the first in couple that we ended up getting married. We met in May and we got married the following April. And we've been doing the Inn together ever since. So
that's amazing. That's
yeah.
amazing. We'll call that a happy accident because
yes,
Yeah.
accident.
It's like fate. That's definitely, if it wasn't for that other
Absolutely.
Rob or Bob,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, but there are no real accidents, I believe.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
that
Thank
might
you.
have been a happy accident, but the rest was not, because as we all know, you worked very, very hard. You and all of the other volunteers that started the very first Mary Brennan Inn worked hard, expanded the organization to include the shelters, to include, other services that were provided. We just watched that video from 2018. Even from then to now, things have
Yeah.
have changed so much. But one of the things that I love about the Inn is how you have never strayed from your original mission. And Jean, if you could just, I love the story in the beginning at that first meeting of how you all talked about, having two hands and wanting to help, and how it was at that moment that you decided that everybody needed to be treated with dignity, respect, and love. So just give us a little bit of background about how that came to be and how you've never wavered from that.
Okay, yes. I guess there was a simplicity about the whole concept that when Mike went around the room and initially asked everyone why they were there, the first person said, my name is John Smith. I saw the ad in the paper. I have two hands and I want to help. And everyone just went, oh, like that. That was such a nice way of summing up what they had to say. And what I got scared about is that everyone going around the room said almost the same thing. And after a while, if I was sitting to Mike's right, so I was the last person to speak, after I heard so many saying almost the exact same words about why they were there, I started wondering, could this be a religious cult? Like that people are all brainwashed already and they're already saying they have two hands and they want to help. And so finally, when it came to me, I realized that I was going to say, I didn't see the ad in the paper because I hadn't. The woman who brought me had seen the ad and told me about it. I didn't see the ad in the paper. I had two hands and I had already found out the soup kitchen was going to be open during the day when I worked, so I couldn't help. So I got to say, my name is Jean Kelly. I didn't see the ad in the paper. I have two hands and I can't help. And they all looked at me like, who let you in? And and that's when Mike said, don't worry, we'll find something for you to do, and said I could be the temporary volunteer chairperson. So now, 38 years later, I'm still waiting for the real volunteer chairperson to show up because I've been filling in temporarily. But as a result, that's how I got to meet Rob and meet so many phenomenal, good-hearted people. And everyone who has come from 38 years ago to now has a similar thread in their makeup. And that thread is that they're empathetic. They feel for people in need. The need has changed, and we've responded to that need in so many different ways. When AIDS happened in 1985, we actually opened the first shelter for people with AIDS because people were becoming homeless as a result of having the disease. We helped a lot of people, unfortunately, go through the last stages of their life. And it's ironic 38 years later that, we now have the pandemic taking people's lives. And yet, we're still here and still giving people their basic needs and hoping to keep them safe, giving them the masks now, the hand sanitizers, yet still giving them the warm gloves and hats and scarves and coats and new underwear and socks and anything they need to kind of get through this next stage that we're in. But the life has continued in a way, I think, that shows us that the only thing we're seeing after meeting people's first needs of food and then moving on to shelter and then seeing clothing and then toiletries, and then all the benefits that they need through CTC now, thanks to the last 5 years of having that. The next piece is their mental health. And this is where we're seeing that many people just can't get to a doctor and really be diagnosed for if they have suffering from mental illness. And some of it is temporary. They only have the illness because of the trauma they have lived through. They can recover, but only if they can live like we can inside and be okay. So what we're so thrilled about in these last few years, thanks to CTC and a special grant from the government, the Esprit grant from New York State, we're able to start a pilot program that is now continuing, that's providing free mental health counseling for the guests of the inn. And that is making a huge difference in them understanding what has happened. And the counselors that have come in said that of the initial 100 people they've interacted with, that the guests of the inn are among the most highly traumatized people of anyone they've ever worked with. And when they ask them, who is your emergency contact in the event something happens, almost every one of them says their emergency contact is the inn. So they here are at the highest level of trauma and they have no support other than the inn. And that's what all of the supporters of the inn have made possible, is for us to have been that lifeline.
Wow, that's amazing. I think that it's really something to be said how throughout all of these years, how you've changed with the times, literally with the times, through all of these different things that have gone on in the world that have affected people. I think that the inn has been a constant and has been able to adapt. I mean, the pandemic is just another thing on the list, it seems, that has given, sort of thrown us for a loop. And we've had to, this word has been used so many times in 2020, but pivot, it really has allowed us to change and adapt and make sure that the guests are taken care of any way that we can. And just to close out, Jean, because I could talk to you all day. You know, I can listen to your. I've been listening to your stories for many years, and I can continue to listen to them. But you mentioned the guests and how I think talking about how the guests adapt is really important. You often call the guests masters of the universe. And I just want to know from you how that has just sort of, you know, solidified what that phrase that you used during this last year. Again, another word that's overused this year is unprecedented, right? So what what have you seen has happened to the guests through this pandemic?
I definitely believe it has shaken them to, you know, but they don't show how shaken they are because they are so strong internally. But it's frightening when the people they're relying on are also in danger. And that's what I see happened even after 9/11, witnessing how the guests reacted on 9/11, that they didn't know anyone in the World Trade Center, but they did know that everybody who was helping them could have been affected. And that was very touching to me to see that they are very quiet and very respectful, but at the same time, frightened a little bit to say, if we were to pull back, where would they go? And that's what I think during the pandemic, the hardest part was closing the doors, but being able to in one day put the plastic booth outside and still never miss one day of giving people food, but then realizing there's nowhere to go to the bathroom. We had to put the porta potties there, give people access the funds they need to take a shower at someone else's house or to get them a 3-hour stay at a motel so they could take a shower. However, we've had to accommodate, I think that has been certainly appreciated by the guests. In fact, when they first saw the porta potties put out, I overheard that one guest said to the other guests, do you believe how much they care about us that they would think to do that? Because they didn't ask us. We just did it. And I think from the very beginning, if we can all realize that while the guests are masters of the universe for surviving all they've done, they also are very, very appreciative and incredibly grateful for what we have done. And we have said from the beginning, and we still say it today, anyone on one side of the counter could be on the other side. It's just happenstance who gets to end up where. But I've said to many of the guests that if the positions were reversed, they would do the same for us. And they all say, absolutely.
Rob, I have a
Yes.
question for you because you deal a lot with our supporters. You've made some really strong and amazing relationships over the years. What do you think you've seen? What is the most impressive thing that you've seen? Because I know that, you know, I mean, supporters of the Inn have always been wonderful, but have you seen anything, you know, throughout the years where the support has been something that has just been really amazing?
Well, one of the number one takeaways is there are so many really good people out there. I mean, I shouldn't say it's amazing, but I did just say that, but you hear so much negativity, but it's not, people really are amazing. And it's so impressive for me to see how good people are. And that includes everybody. I mean, the donors and the guests and the volunteers and the staff, just, you know, they're all impressive. But I just wanted to add something else about, you know, things that impressed me, maybe with a little bit of humor. Recently, because of COVID, some of you may know the Inn has been doing curbside food drives. And there's a wonderful woman, wonderful Inn supporter named Melissa Connolly, who's involved with, who works at Hofstra University. And Melissa and I kind of coordinated, and we're there on a Saturday morning with maybe 5 other volunteers. So people drive up in their car, they pop their trunk, we take the food out, and we bring it into the Inn. Thank you very much. So the last time we did this, about 2 weeks ago, I'm there and this car pulls up and I go over to the car and the woman pops the trunk and I take 2 bags of food out and I bring it into the Mary Brennan Inn soup kitchen. And then when I come back out, Melissa says to me, you know, like, here's $20. And for me. And I'm saying, well, what's this for? Well, she said, the woman in that car called her over and said, here, give $20 to that man who helped me.
You got a tip?
It's so funny.
Was that your first tip?
Yes, it was. It was my first.
That's great.
I gave it to the inn, of course.
That's great. Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine 38 years of stories that we could sit and tell. So although I can sit and talk to you literally all day, I guess we have to wrap it up. But I just want to thank you both, not only for the last 38 years, but also for what's to come for the inn. You know, we are just so grateful to have the foundation that you've built. So thank you.
Thank you. And
thank you, Dana,
just
so
want
much.
to say a final thank you to all the incredible donors from the past who are currently donating or who can't donate anymore, but still made it possible for us to get here. We wouldn't have gotten to this point if you hadn't given us contributions in the past. So don't feel badly if you can't now, but anyone who is in a position that could continue to help us to, you know, hopefully one day be able to come down and see it in person, but if not, see the videos. And thank you, Dana, for putting the videos together so everyone can see what we're doing.
And if I could just add, and the volunteers, and most of the volunteers are a little bit out of sight now because they can't come out, but if you're out there watching, we miss you, we love you.
Yes, we miss
hope
you.
Come back soon.
You're our bedrock of how we're still doing this, and there will be a space for you, and you're always in our hearts, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
Absolutely. And here's to the next 38 years of the inn.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.